5 years ago, I was paying $65 a month for my subscriptions. Today, those same subscriptions cost $111, and I don't even use half of them anymore. That's why now I use Rocket Money to manage my subscriptions for me. The app gives you a list of all of your subscriptions and reminds you of upcoming payments, so you're not hit with any surprise charges. On top of that, it also sends you alerts when subscription prices go up, so you always know the price you're paying. If you decide you no longer want a subscription, you can cancel it right from the app. No customer service needed. And the best part is, Rocket Money even reaches out and tries to get you refunded for some of the money you lost. On average, people that cancel their subscriptions with Rocket Money save $378 a year. And overall, Rocket Money has saved its members $880 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Before we get into details of this framework, I have to warn you that there are none. And here's Trump attempting to explain it yesterday.
It looks like we have pretty much a concept of a deal.
Concept of a deal. Why does that phrase sound so familiar? Now, we first learned of the concept of the framework of a possibility of a shadow of a ricochet of an echo of a deal yesterday when Trump posted, based upon a very productive meeting that I had with the Secretary General of NATO, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland. This solution, if consummated, will be a great one. It's a weird phrase. If consummated? Is he gonna Greenland?
Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the side room bilateral to Thursday's keynote speech. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi. How are you, Alex?
I'm all right. How are you? We're not allowed to talk about traitors, I don't think, because we won't be able to do it without spoilers. And
there might
a lot
be some
of people
might, saving
they
it up
might,
for Sunday night. Yeah,
they might.
Are you going to watch the Irish one?
No, my other half watched the Irish one, and he was not impressed.
Okay.
You got in a bit of trouble, didn't you, during the week? You got raciared on Blue Sky.
I know. Okay, well, so this was a Blue Sky post I did. And first off, I want to say an enormous thank you to the wonderful Boomer listeners among you all. And a mea culpa, I'm very sorry to our Boomer followers who took offence to it, thought that I was being horrible. Basically, background being, you've got this mad bastard in the White House who is a Boomer and has been allowed to figure out how to use meme generators and horrible AI video software to produce ridiculous misinformation content. And alongside that, an enormous amount of talk about restricting social media use for young people off the back of Australia and UK potentially following suit, etc. So it was kind of a mashup of various different stories around social media, the crux of which is social media is terrible and awful and getting worse for most people. And I have a liberalish instinct when it comes to social media use for young people. I think 16 is probably a bit too old. Maybe 14 would be better. Maybe some kind of graduated thing in, so it's not like a, cliff edge or now you turn 16, you can be thrown into the cesspit of it all. And really just my point being that what AI has done to boomers is what our boomer parents told us would happen if we played video games. It'll rot your brain, cause you to lose touch with reality. And the online sphere has been hugely radicalizing for a lot of the older generation who have been sucked into a lot of right-wing thinking as a consequence of their exposure to terrible Facebook groups and fake accounts pushing AI that they're not able to determine whether or not is real or not. I mean, take my own mum, for example. She sent me a load of photos her sister sent her. Her sister is older than she is, of her swimming with dolphins and riding on the back of a turtle in the Caribbean. And I was like, Mum, she doesn't even have wet hair and she's underwater. how did you not know that your 78-year-old sister didn't go diving with a telescope? So my point was just simply, do we really need to talk about restriction for young people when really we ought to be talking about its deadly impacts on everybody? So anyway, I'm so sorry to people who thought I was being horribly rude. I wasn't. I was being tongue-in-cheek, and I should have learned my lesson by now that trying to be facetious on social media rarely works.
I'm sure they will do some studies on this. I know it must feel terribly unfair, but I'm a man of a certain age, so I guess I have a foot firmly moving into that camp at the very least. And I think there is something there, actually. I know people will take offense because obviously it doesn't apply to everyone. But the point is that as we get older, we do become more prone to nostalgia. We do tend to think of older times in a slightly more rose-tinted way because we experienced them in better physical condition and it was more exciting to us, etc., etc. So, of course, the past looks great. And the thing is that a lot of right-wing radicalization that goes on online is about tapping into nostalgia. And so I do think actually older people are more vulnerable to it because it's much easier to suck them in. And like I said, I'm not immune to that. If they want to shout at you in person, there is an opportunity to do so because we have our editorial meeting on the 17th of January, is it? Tuesday?
Yes, I believe it is.
It is open to all our subscribers because, as you know, we make all of our content available freely to everyone at the same time. Nothing's behind a paywall. And so one of the few things we can offer to supporters only to say thank you are these online meetings where we get to chat to each other and they get to tell us what kind of content they want, what they like and don't like from the last few months, what guests we should have on and things like that. We take a whole load of it on board, like you can actually see it shaping our content. And so if you want to be included in the next editorial meeting on the 17th of February, now is the time to go to ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod and become a monthly supporter. You can do so for as little as £5 a month, and you will get an invitation to our Discord channel, which is a really lively discussion space, and also an invitation to all these online meetings starting on the 17th of February.
So, Alex, another very full fat news week. What shall we cover? What's happened since our Thursday show?
Well, we love a by-election, we do. And this one promises to be extremely juicy. Andrew Gwynn's resignation has created a vacancy, and it's created a vacancy right in the Manchester suburbs. Andy Burnham finally seems to have a path back to Westminster. But is the seat even winnable for anyone Labour in the current climate?
And with Trump incorrectly slagging us off for not helping in Afghanistan, publishing a defense strategy which claims that Europe's pretty much on its own now, and with Russia inflicting very heavy strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, leaving hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians with no heating and sub-zero temperatures. Trilateral peace talks have begun in Abu Dhabi, so I think we should probably chat about that and their chance of success.
Mm-hmm. And if we have time, let's also chat about the biggest news story of the week, the House of Beckham.
Okay, let's get this show on the road. Quiet Riot.
But before you go, tell us, are you a Starmerite or a traitor? Claudia, I am and have been from the very beginning Andy Burnham.
Westminster's in flux, isn't it? And I've had this periodically in this job. Whenever Westminster goes into one of its moments, I always seemingly get dragged in.
Does your brain get dragged in? Do you go along with it and think, do you know what? Yeah, that could be me. I could do a better job.
I hope people don't think this is false in any way. I love this job. And I hope that's come over the last 8 years.
But it's okay to be ambitious, though, isn't it? People can love the job they're currently in and do that job very well, but still have ambition to do a job that has more responsibility.
And I haven't ever ruled out going back to Westminster. I've said that over the years. And obviously I do watch what's going on down there, so I'm not going to say not. But it wouldn't be, I think this is the thing I would want to get over to people. It wouldn't be me sort of saying, right, I'm going to put myself right out there again. It would have to sort of come in a different direction.
there have been so many plots circulating about who plans to unseat Starmer and how that the Labour NEC might as well meet in a turret. After what felt like a decade of speculation, but was actually only about a year, Andrew Gwynn, MP for the Manchester seat of Gorton and Denton, resigned this week due to ill health, triggering the mother of all migraines for the government. Just as leadership challenge chatter had begun to fade, Andy Burnham's route back to Westminster may have just opened up. The Greater Manchester Mayor has been busy publishing opinion pieces about Manchesterism and his vision for the country, prompting politics watchers to feast on the gossip. Naomi, Gwynn had already lost the Labour whip, right? Why?
So nearly a year ago now, it was sort of early February 2025, he gets sacked from the government as a health minister and suspended from the party for very offensive WhatsApp messages he'd left in a group that gets used by various Manchester Labour politicians. And, it was damning. Some of them were racist. He wrote in the group that Diane Abbott's appearance as the first black woman at PMQs was a, quote, joke for Black History Month. He had been retweeting a tweet making sexualized comments about Angela Rayner. He wrote about Marshall Rosenberg, the American psychologist, as sounding too militaristic and too Jewish.
Right. So the health reasons in question.
Well, they're definitely mental health related.
That he's a knob.
The reason for the delay, as I've been told, was something to do with his pension settlement. So he didn't want to sort of force the by-election until it was clear what pension he would be eligible for. That got resolved at the beginning of 2026. And Andy Burnham had been eyeing up the seat for some time.
Will Labour rivals, like, let's say, Zach Polanski, or George Galloway, or Reform, for that matter, will they want to make it difficult for Andy Burnham to get elected by standing someone very strong, like Zach Polanski, in that seat? Or will they want to make it easier for him to get into Parliament because it will put the fox in the hen house?
Look, I'm not going to speculate on George Galloway. Terrible individual. If he's still got the energy in him, he'll continue his political zombie career of coming back and disappearing and coming back again. The Greens is a different matter altogether. So you've got Zach Polanski, who is from Manchester. He wouldn't have to fake the Manchester accent. He's from a different part of Manchester. I think he grew up in Salford. And he is looking for a route to a parliamentary seat himself. So it wouldn't be unfathomable for him to have a run at this. He has stated that the Greens are there to replace the Labour Party. He's on record as saying that. He is also on record as saying we would be prepared to work with a Labour Party, but not one led by Keir Starmer. However, I think when we sort of take Zach as a personality out of it and look at what the Greens would be looking for, they're going to be looking for a chance to prove that they are there as a credible alternative to the Labour Party. Mm-hmm. They are in a very strong position in a lot of Labour seats, and increasingly so, not just from the last general election results where all of their second places are in Labour seats, but also for the poll ratings that have had them climbing ever since. And I think their position will be this. Labour, you don't participate in non-aggression pacts with us. You've done it with the Lib Dems at the last election. The Lib Dems and the Greens and Plaid Cymru have actually stood down candidates for one another. And across the country, Greens and Lib Dems and others do local election deals with one another and happily form rainbow coalitions to lead local authorities. So I think their message probably is, come and talk to us if you don't want us to run, and we can hammer out some kind of deal. But if you're not prepared to talk to us, if you're going to continue to sort of freeze us out of everything and not want to play nicely and talking about how we can have a progressive united front against the far right breathing down our necks going into the general election, we will stand and we will hurt you.
Do they not want them to run, though? Because what's the downside for Labour? If you look at it from a Starmer government point of view, if Zach Polanski beats Andy Burnham, that kind of takes care of Andy Burnham for the foreseeable future. And if Zach Polanski doesn't beat Andy Burnham, then this really weakens the claim that the Greens are a ready-made alternative to Labour and puts Zach Polanski in a slightly different position, having lost a parliamentary election. If they sort of battle it out and reform come through the middle, then that provides the perfect case study for Labour to go to the country and say, this is what happens when people split the left vote. So why would they want to do a pact on this particular occasion?
Well, I don't think that they'd want to do a pact on this particular occasion. It's more about whether or not they can have a conversation about the forthcoming general election and where everybody might do deals to avoid that exact scenario you said of reform coming up through the middle in our ridiculous first-past-the-post voting system that would allow a Reform MP in a 5-party neck-and-neck race to win on a mid to high 20s share of the vote.
Yeah.
What I think it's worth doing is taking a couple of steps back and talking about whether or not Andy Burnham can be the candidate. This is not a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination. And it's all kicking off very, very quickly. So as we speak, candidates have until tomorrow, Sunday, midnight, to submit an application.
When is the actual by-election?
We don't know. So the writ hasn't been moved on the date of it. Most speculation is to avoid the enormous cost of running another election. It'll be rolled into the 7th of May local elections later this year. But Labour candidates have got until the end of the weekend to get an application in. Long listing will happen on Monday by the NEC, shortlisting interviews on Tuesday, and then a selection meeting taking place on January the 31st. So all before the end of next week, we will know who Labour's candidate is going to be.
And in fact, while we record, with minutes to go really before the deadline, Andy Burnham has asked the NEC for permission to put himself forward for that election. He attaches a long letter to the party's chair, Anna Turley. I'm just scanning it now. It says it's been a difficult decision to make. He asks for permission to stand, then gives the reasons for doing this. Apparently, he left Westminster because he had a strong sense that really Westminster politics wasn't working in his part of the world, and he's gone to Manchester to try to do things in a different way with some success, but he's now effectively hit a wall in that as well, and there need to be changes at the national level, so he feels the compulsion to come back. An elegant way of putting it, if not entirely honest, I would say. That's interesting. Then he says that he can assure the NEC that he will run a unifying and positive campaign. And also he assures the NEC that if he's successful in the by-election, he would give his all to the subsequent mayoral by-election that would go on. Because I'm sure one of the worries will be that they might lose the by-election for the MP seat and then lose the by-election for the mayoralty. So that's the letter from Andy Burnham. So we now know that he has asked for permission.
So it's all moving very, very quickly. There was a lot of speculation during the week about whether the NEC would try and say, no, this needs to be an all-women shortlist or an ethnic minority shortlist, which their rules currently allow them to implement for underrepresented groups and areas and things like that. This causes a headache internally for Starmer. If he's seen to block a leadership rival, does that make him look weak or even weaker? If he doesn't, of course, he's opening himself up to another very popular figure with a much higher personal approval rating than he has going into a potential leadership challenge after the May elections. So all of these things are going around everybody's heads about what is the least worst option.
Quite a lot of moving parts, isn't it? Zach did a party political broadcast last week that I think caught your eye in quite a positive way. So we'll listen to a little bit of it.
Even going to the dentist gets put off. So you cut back and you pick up the pace. No holiday this year. Sorry, kids. Living with tooth pain. You take a second job, sometimes 3, just to stay where you are. Wages stuck in 2008. Prices racing ahead. You never get to see the kids, snapping at them when you do. And it's the same story all around the country. Cities, towns, villages. People working full-time, still broke. Builders building houses they'll never live in. Nurses queuing up at food banks. And we're the lucky ones, the ones with jobs. The pressure never lifts, so the rest of us run faster to help the people we love.
What did you like about it?
Well, at the beginning, I didn't. And I was like, oh, God, where's this going? And I wasn't sure. And then the creative execution of it with the running faster and faster and faster. And I knew it was going to do the stop. And he's a trained actor. He executed it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I just thought the political economy points he was making are the ones that people want to hear on the progressive left.
Yeah.
And he landed them superbly.
Yeah. And I liked his previous one as well, with the people sleeping, and that while they're sleeping, some people are making millions. That was he's just a very good storyteller, I think.
Quiet, Riot. You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win. Quiet, Riot.
Can I ask you, you've done some MRP, haven't you?
No, I haven't, but I do keep a very close eye on everybody else's. So we've done MRP not on Westminster voting intention. We've done it on other issues around Europeanism and internationalism. But our friends at
I see. Yes, that's why I had it in my head that you did some MRP,
That's
but
right,
it was on the question of should we be closer to Europe or not. So has anyone done voting intention?
Yes, so our
MRP?
friends at More in Common, Luke Trill, have done a very recent January MRP, and they are clearly showing a three-way battle between the Greens on 23, Labour on 28, and Reform on 30 in Gorton and Denton. And
blimey.
I have seen other ones that don't look too dissimilar. Some have the Greens a bit lower down on 18, but then a higher other. So the More in Common other was 2%, whereas some of the other ones that I've seen that aren't yet published, so I can't really talk about them too much, have got a slightly higher other figure, which could be a Muslim vote that we're not entirely sure how it would break, and could quite easily break Green, which would get them back up to similar levels that the More in Common one has of having them on 23. Now, remember, by-elections, you get a full party's resource going to a seat, but not if it's held on the same day as massive elections elsewhere. You're going to have Reform going hell for leather in the Senedd elections. Labour are going to be fighting very, very hard up in Holyrood and for other local elections. And the Greens, of course, want to do a lot of activity in local elections too. But the Greens have been waiting for precisely this kind of seat to come up.
What about the Manchester Mayor position? Like, first of all, does he have to resign as Manchester Mayor to go for it? Or can he do that thing where they see if they've been elected and then have to resign? So could he hold on to the Manchester mayoralty up until he knows whether he's been elected to Westminster?
He has to resign.
Right.
The rules have been changed. They can no longer do that. He would have to force the by-election for the Greater Manchester Mayor position at the same time.
That heightens the stakes, doesn't it?
Exactly, which is why so many people around the Labour Party conference last year, when the whole thing was billed as basically being a festival of Andy Burnham and he was back, was quite damp-squibbed in the end, because a lot of people were saying, but there is no route for him. You're going to have to resign as mayor. You're going to have to find a seat, and it's going to have to be a seat that Labour can actually win, to negate the negative arguments for not running. And remember, the NEC has a majority of pro-Starmer people on it at the moment, would be to have lined up somebody who would be far more likely to hold the Greater Manchester mayoralty for Labour. And so names like Gary Neville have started to circulate in the last day or so as a potential replacement for Andy. So Gary into Manchester Mayor, he is an increasingly political figure and has been very vocal, and of course is extremely well known and popular. Andy into Gorton and Denton. So there's all of that. But you have other pretty well-respected names in the Labour movement up in the Northwest that have done the hard yards, who locally are very well respected and highly thought of. You've got people like Bev Craig, who is the leader of Manchester City Council Labour group, a woman, a youngish woman. So there, we don't know.
One last question, Naomi. On Thursday, you said that the thing that had changed effectively Starmer's position, making it slightly more secure as opposed to a month and a half ago, was that the international situation was so insecure, and we'll come to talk about it in the second part, that it made the person wielding the knife even more unlikely to wear the crown, because they would be seen as causing a sort of leadership challenge in the middle of a huge international security crisis. So might other candidates and other pretenders welcome Burnham finally going for it, because actually it opens the road for all of them to go for it?
Good question, Alex. Burnham published an opinion piece this week about Manchesterism.
What the hell is Manchesterism?
Why Manchester has succeeded where other deindustrialized northern cities have not. Really laying out a vision for the country based on how he managed to pull together the ingredients of a successful northern powerhouse in Greater Manchester. That is quite clearly somebody saying, look, I've done it here, I can do it for the rest of the country. I am prepared to do what the Prime Minister hasn't yet done, which is be very clear about what I will do for the country, where I want to take it, what Britain in the 21st century would look like under me. He has been so much more overt in his leadership challenge than any of the other candidates that he might be more willing to wield the knife. He will need a significant number of MPs backing him in order to do that, as any of the candidates would, to succeed. I don't know, but certainly Burnham being in the PLP once again does raise the chances of a very serious leadership challenge to Keir Starmer in the not too distant future. Quiet, Riot. It's been nearly 4 years since Putin's forces started their most recent war in Ukraine. 4 years of grinding attritional warfare, 4 years of brave Ukrainian men and women holding Europe's front line from a tyrant intent on edging closer and closer to EU and NATO borders. On Friday evening, trilateral talks between Washington, Kyiv and Moscow began in the Gulf, resuming again on Saturday morning. Going into them, Putin's key demand was for Ukraine to surrender the 20% it still holds of the Donetsk region of the Donbass, about 5,000 square kilometers. Zelensky refuses to give up that land because Russia has not been able to capture it, despite 48 months of trying extremely hard. Going into the talks, reports were that a deal on US security guarantees for Kyiv was ready, and that Ukraine was simply waiting on Trump for a specific date and place to sign it. Meanwhile, Trump even managed to anger Keir Starmer with his claims that the UK didn't really help out in Afghanistan, despite the loss of more than 450 British military personnel. And the Pentagon has published a new defence strategy stating the USA will offer more limited military support to its so-called allies going forward. Alex, the world's press was heavily focused on Davos speeches from Macron, Carney, and of course Trump. But what did Zelensky's Davos speech signal?
Zelensky was not happy with European allies in his Davos speech. It was quite a sharp critique. He talked about Europe living Groundhog Day again and again. He made a very eye-catching comment about them being a sort of fragmented kaleidoscope of countries. Let's have a little listen.
Instead of becoming a truly global power, Europe remains a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers. Instead of taking the lead in defending freedom worldwide, especially when America's focus shifts elsewhere, Europe looks lost, trying to convince the US president to change. But he will not change. President Trump loves who he is.
Zelensky does do that occasionally. He becomes exasperated and kind of gets a little bit prickly on the international stage. It tends to not serve him particularly well, especially if he's kind of wrong on the facts.
Right.
He took a massive swipe at people for sending a small number of soldiers to Greenland and saying, what's that for? It's nothing. It doesn't give a message to anything. It doesn't send a message to Denmark. He didn't understand, first of all, that these were senior people going for a reconnaissance rather than infantrymen. He didn't understand how that raises the stakes for America in terms of attacking. If you offered Volodymyr Zelensky 40 senior army people from several European nations to go and sit on the Ukraine front line, surely he understands that that's not about the 40 people. And so when he gets a little bit angry and fractious and misunderstands things like that, I think it weakens his position.
Right.
I mean, his position is right in its core. As we have said a gazillion times, European allies just have not done enough to allow Ukraine to win the war. They've done enough to allow the war to become this sort of grinding stalemate. That means Russia is denied a quick victory, but it remains unresolved and unresolvable. We have said that 100 times.
And
everyone
also
knows
Biden
that.
failed. Biden could have killed it off.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. Everyone understands that. It is a great failing. We are in agreement with Zelensky. Standing up and telling off the people actually trying to help you, I'm not sure how that plays psychologically. He does seem to have this Angstlust Annette told us about. He does seem to occasionally flirt with doing the wrong thing just because it makes him feel better. Sure, he's right. Sure, it's something that needed to be said. Did he say it in the right way? I'm not sure.
These peace talks, I'm interested in US leverage in them because Trump has basically been pausing aid into Ukraine. He's been slowing it down. And so do you think that they basically have reduced leverage by comparison to that they had previously in any peace talks? I mean, Putin is not slowing down in his nightly strikes on Kyiv and other cities, even while the talks are physically taking place.
America has moved much more to a commercial model. You know, Ukraine and Europe now pay for the arms that go that way. And under normal circumstances, I would say that the military-industrial complex and the huge companies involved in that will not look kindly to a US president that turns around and said, I'm canceling all your export licenses. You can no longer sell this stuff to Ukraine. That's a really different proposition to saying we're not going to send it anymore for free. Would he turn around and say to this huge sector, stop making money? I'm not sure. But like I said, under normal circumstances, you know, Trump is losing his grip on reality. He's becoming more and more dictatorial. And in that sort of reality, in that multiverse that we seem to be living in now, sure, he could turn around and say, just stop sending arms. So I'm not sure it completely erodes American influence on the talks.
Well, all I'll say is poor Zelensky. If you had to pick two people to do a deal with who you think are the least likely people on earth to stick to that deal, who other than Trump and Putin would you fucking pick?
Yeah.
I mean, poor
But also, we say all this. Is there any indication that Russia wants to do a deal?
No.
Because it seems to me that as soon as there were some noises that they were quite close, you know, the 26-point plan had been reduced to 20, then to 18, the most egregious stuff had been taken out, and all that remained was this Moscow demand for 20% of the Donetsk region, which they hadn't actually managed to take militarily. So they were asking for more than the current conflict line was. And as soon as that was distinguished as the remaining point to negotiate, I have seen a lot of stuff now talking about 25% more. So my feeling is that if Ukraine turned around and agreed to everything Russia wanted, Russia would ask for something else.
Of course.
I don't think it's genuine.
Or they plant a false flag, break the whole agreement, and carry on the war.
I do think it is significant that there are tripartite talks. That is a necessary condition of any kind of ceasefire, any kind of deal, right? If you don't get those three parties talking to each other in a room, nothing can happen. That much is true. But whether anything will happen, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether Russia is there in good faith to do a deal.
And nor do I think Trump is, if I'm honest. We've had the infamous national security strategy published at the end of 2025. Now we have a new Pentagon defense strategy. Does it tell us anything we didn't already know, Alex? You know, basically,
well, it kind of confirms.
Yeah, you're kind of on your own. And to publish that before these talks surely plays into Putin's hand. Oh, look, Europe are going to have to bankrupt their own countries to support this thing because Trump's out.
I don't know that they would have to bankrupt them. There are some quite sensible, moderate voices saying if you compare our economies, our collective economies, to America, they're not all that different. If you compare our collective economies to Russia's, they are vastly superior. And so, to what extent would we really have to bankrupt ourselves in order to step up defense? Absolutely, we would have to have a frank and difficult conversation with our populations, saying, this is what needs to happen, where do we find it? Absolutely, the political environment right now is fractious, and that would allow a lot of far-right pro-Moscow players to say, why should you be going without in order to fund a war in Ukraine? All of that would happen, but I'm not sure it would spell bankruptcy for Europe. And there's also even a school of thought that says, if the main rival to far-right parties are center-right parties, then going on a defense of the realm point, saying that we're the ones proposing strong defense and the far right want to sell you out to Putin might actually be quite a vote-winning strategy and might, help stabilize the political situation in Europe.
The number one resolution for people last year was to save more money, but nearly half gave up by February. Don't let that be you. Download Rocket Money to reach your financial goals this year. Track your spending, cut waste, and automate savings in one simple app. Rocket Money shows you all your expenses and categorizes them, so you know exactly where your money's going and where you're overspending. From there, the app cuts waste by canceling your unused subscriptions and lowering your bills. No customer service needed. With that money freed up, the app will automatically set some cash aside for your goals. Whether it's an emergency fund, paying off debt, or saving for vacation, Rocket Money's got you covered. Users love the app, with over 186,000 five-star ratings. And on average, users can save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Make saving money a priority this year. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Well, Alex, enter stage far-right chief Brexit negotiator Lord David Frost, who proclaimed this weekend that the UK should seek to be the USA's new Israel. What the actual... What?
I mean, bloody hell. This is someone that Johnson put at the head of leading the most important trade negotiation this country has done in half a century, I would say, if not more. This is someone that the Telegraph still pays vast amounts of money for their opinion. And he's genuinely mad. Alistair Heath mad. And it was so delicious that he should write that piece and publish it on the very day that Trump turns around and insults the 450 families. Not to mention all the people who have had life-changing injuries and life-changing mental health issues from those Middle Eastern wars that we went into specifically and explicitly to help America. Because for me, it's not just about Afghanistan. Iraq is even more important because Iraq didn't have international support. And still the UK supported it at huge cost to the government, at huge cost to our political environment, trust in politics.
And our military.
It all goes back to Iraq, right?
Mm-hmm.
Huge cost in the faith of the military in political leadership. And the only reason to do that was to preserve the special relationship, right? And so for an American president to then turn around and say that is absolutely unacceptable. And for Lord David Frost to have his arse hanging out in that morning's Telegraph by saying we should aspire. I mean, what the fuck is going on in that man's mind?
Maybe he meant in terms of GDP per capita. Maybe that's his ambition for post-Brexit Britain, because Israel's is so much lower than the UK's and we're only getting poorer as a consequence of Brexit.
But also, of all the countries in the world, why would you plump for one that lives in existential angst the entire time because lives under an actual dome of missiles because it's at war with every single one of its neighbors? Like, whatever you think of Israel, whatever you think about any of the situation in the Middle East, why would you think that it's aspirational for your country to become like Israel?
Do you think there was any kind of editorial discussion that happened? You know, he files the piece and some sub reads it and thinks, I might need to flag this one up the poll because, we quite like this guy and he's clearly going to make a tit out of himself.
First of all, they are catering increasingly to an American segment of readers who will love reading that. They are catering to a segment of readers who would quite like to be an American protectorate, I'm afraid. That tendency does exist. And it does reveal, I think, Brexit for the nonsense that it was. All this stuff about sovereignty, it had nothing to do with sovereignty. These people would quite happily give away our sovereignty to become an American protectorate, provided Uncle Trump saves them from wokery, a thing that exists entirely in their heads. This is an actual psychosis.
My Blue Sky post should have read, boomers who read the Telegraph should be banned from social media.
Boomers who read the Telegraph should be banned from everything.
So, of course, Trump has managed to offend hundreds of families in the UK who lost family members in the conflict in Afghanistan. Let's have a little reminder of what he said.
I've always said, will they be there if we ever needed them? And that's really the ultimate test. And I'm not sure of that. I know that we would have been there or we would be there. But will they be there? And let's hope that never happens. We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. They'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little off the front lines. But we've been very good to Europe and to many other countries. And, now under my administration, that began because we had a very successful first term. That began then, but it has to be a two-way street.
Alex, initially the White House sort of tried to ignore the story, hoped it would go away. Then they tried to spin it.
Yeah, they tried to say that they were talking about NATO troops.
Exactly.
Not allies troops. What does that mean anyway?
But, this has drawn the strongest condemnation yet from European leaders, the UK leader, pretty much the entire media too. Dare we dream that there actually is a line that exists?
This has, I think, galvanized people in a nice way at this moment in time, because they are moving in the direction that we've always said they should be moving. I thought it was Starmer's strongest challenge to the president yet, coming hot on the tail of what I thought was a pretty steely PMQs on the issue of Greenland. So, yes, I think there is a line, certainly for European leaders, and we are finding it. I don't know that has had much of an impact in the States. Maybe Prince Harry's intervention will push it a little bit more into public consciousness and make it a bit newsier. It was very notable, by the way, that every single newspaper that condemned the comments Trump made and sort of grudgingly congratulated Starmer for taking a harder line, even the right-wing ones, didn't mention Prince Harry.
Yeah.
I mean, they would rather praise Starmer than Prince Harry, which is just extraordinary, right? Because they would give their soul for any kind of royal angle to any story. But if Harry does something praiseworthy in the middle of suing them, they just blanked him, which I thought was really quite extraordinary.
Well, Alex, you have neatly segued us into topic 3. Quiet Riot. So here's the story from A to Z. You want to get with me, you got to listen carefully. Easy V doesn't come for free. She's a little crazy. Well, if Brooklyn's Insta stories are anything to go by. You mentioned Harry. That made me think of Harry and Meghan, American wife, British famous person. And there we have it. We've got billionaire heiress Nicola Peltz Beckham, married to Brooklyn Beckham, who has given us all something to distract from the world's chaos. And you'd have to have been living under a rock to have escaped the obsession with the Beckham family feud this week. So we're going to briefly go over it. And then, because Alex, every family rows, at least occasionally, we'll talk a little bit about the worst/funniest family feuds of our own.
Okay, so Naomi, I'll be honest. I have been living slightly under a rock. I have seen a lot of reaction to it.
Yeah.
But because I'm really not very good with Instagram, I don't know the origin of it. So can you explain to me in simple terms what prompted it all? Like, I've seen loads of memes of Posh Spice dancing.
Okay.
But that's,
Okay.
I don't know what
it's
it's
evolved
about.
as the week has gone on. So Brooklyn Beckham, who it's long been rumoured is pretty estranged from his mum and dad and siblings since his relationship and marriage to Nicola Peltz, daughter of a multi-millionaire billionaire who has links to Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and other people. And he's now, re-emerged as some kind of celebrity chef kind of persona on Instagram and TikTok. Anyway, long been rumoured that he and his parents have fallen out. He breaks cover to post an Instagram story, notably not on his main grid, but on his stories, which are only live for a day before they disappear,
Oh, that's
making a
interesting.
big statement about how his family had blocked him on all social media, that his mum was meant to design his wife's wedding dress and pulled out at the last minute from doing it, and that she danced inappropriately with me at my wedding, ruining my first dance that was meant to be with my wife. So it is the most Hun culture, if people are familiar with that phrase, look it up if you're not, story to break on the internet for many a year, and has sent everybody who creates any kind of celebrity related content into doing speculative memes about what this inappropriate dance could have been. Did she get really hammered and twerk her son at his own wedding, etc.? Anyway, story evolves. The DJ from the wedding has broken cover. This is DJ Fat Tony, who has said, yes, something inappropriate
Is
did
that
happen.
spelled P-H-A-T?
No,
I very
no.
much hope.
No, I'm afraid it's not.
That's a disappointment.
He has said, no, it wasn't that Victoria Beckham slut-dropped her son and grinded up against him or anything like that. It was that Mark Antony, who was comparing the wedding, sets up the first dance by saying, blah, 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 Brooklyn, and I would now like to welcome to the stage the most beautiful woman in the room. Everyone was expecting him to name the bride. He then says, Victoria Beckham. And Victoria steps forward and dances with her son while the bride runs out of her own wedding in tears. This is all according to DJ Fat Tony.
There was no, I'm not allowed to say slut dropping, but I'm going to say it. There was no slut dropping. There was no black cat PVC cat suits. There was no Spice Girl action. What it was the word inappropriate. Why I said it was inappropriate as well was because at the time it was the timing. So what happened was, this is what happened, guys. Right. So basically, Mark Antony was performing on stage. He then called Brooklyn onto stage. Brooklyn went onto the stage where the next minute everyone was expecting it to be Nicola to go up and do the first dance. And then Mark Antony asks the most beautifulest woman in the room to come to the stage. And then he says, Victoria, come to the stage. So Victoria's by the stage, she goes onto the stage. And of course, at that point, Brooklyn's like suddenly literally devastated because he thought he was going to do his first dance with his wife.
God, this is so Snow White, isn't
What
it?
little of it I do know. I'm sure there's more. I am not a big follower of the Beckhams or celebrity culture in general, but that I think is as much as there is out there that anyone really needs to know about.
Right. And the other thing my other half informs me is that Victoria Beckham is now #1 in the charts. What?
Well, brand Beckham is huge, and a lot of people make their money from the Beckhams. So what I did notice was that a lot of media outlets, fashion brands, content creators or beauty content creators that push a lot of her products have all come out in rapid defense of her. He's a Nepo baby. He's doing a Harry. He's trying to hurt them. It's his evil wife making him do it. He couldn't have strung those sentences together himself. Poor old David and Victoria. David himself was at Davos. David.
So she's a Meghan, basically.
This is how they're framing her.
She's a Meghan
She's
figure.
stolen our lovely British boy and is being mean.
I see.
And David
That's
Beckham gets
interesting.
asked about social media use for children at Davos and did a slightly sort of barbed thing. He didn't comment directly on the Brooklyn Instagram story, but he just said, all children make mistakes. And it's up to us to help educate them on how to use social media. I mean, Brooklyn Beckham is an adult. He's not a child anymore. So, yeah, I guess all of those who are either mega fans of the Spice Girls and she can do no wrong, or whom,
So she hasn't
make a living
released
from
anything.
promoting her.
So she hasn't released anything. It's kind of
No,
a
it's an old
show of
song.
support.
That's right. It's
Oh.
yeah, let's skyrocket this woman who can't sing back to number one in the charts.
This is hilarious. This is absolutely hilarious. Do you think we're being punked? Is this a massive PR thing? Because basically they're angling for a Kardashians type reality show, which seems to me quite a lateral move
Who knows,
for
Alex?
that family.
All I will say is this is a couple who named their firstborn child after the place where they shagged. You know, he's
Right,
called
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn because he was conceived in Brooklyn.
And presumably Romeo was conceived in an Alfa Romeo.
Oh God! And Harper
sorry.
and Harper's Bazaar magazine HQ or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the other one called? They've got another cruise. Maybe on a cruise.
Yes.
Maybe they were on a cruise. So look, they have commodified their zygote, let alone, you know, embryo, baby, next baby, next baby, next baby. These are sort of, you know, pretty terrible people when it comes to exploiting their lives for cash. Look, it wouldn't surprise me, as my short answer to your question. They survive only by continual renewal and giving themselves some kind of relevance in a fast-changing world. It could be. I've never, ever watched a single episode of The Kardashians, so I don't really know.
Me neither, but it just feels to me like, I think it's Disney that now owns the Kardashians. And it feels to me like the Beckhams are in the middle of negotiations with Netflix and thought they'd pepper it with something, you know, spicy.
Spicy Spice Girls.
And not particularly posh spicy, I have to say.
Want to feel more confident with your finances this year? If you have 60 seconds, I can show you how quick and easy it is to start building healthy money habits that could last you the entire year just by using Rocket Money. Step 1, download Rocket Money. Step 2, link all your accounts and see your entire spending picture, your subscriptions, your upcoming bills, your due dates, everything. Step 3, tap a subscription you don't use and cancel it. Boom! That's money back every single month. Step 4, create a financial goal for something you want to save for, whether it be a vacation, a retirement account, or a pet's birthday. We don't judge. Now let the app automatically move small amounts of cash towards your goal. In a month, you'll see real dollars piling up. In a year, you'll be shocked at how much money you saved. Similar to the over 10 million members on the app that have saved up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Use the Savings Challenge as one step closer to feeling better about your finances today at rocketmoney.com/cancel. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. One more time, it's rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Do you have generally speaking, an extended feuding family, or are you quite loved up with each other? And what do you fight about and how?
Well, Alex, I'm not going to air dirty laundry on a podcast.
Oh, please do.
Because I'm far too British. And we don't.
Yeah,
really
and also
do this.
because your mum listens.
And my mum listens. But and so do many other members of my family. But we are very British about it, and or English even, I suppose. They're quite uptight. We're much more likely to have just completely avoided talking about the subject that has annoyed us, and then blanking one another for a while, or because we're going quiet rather than having some big explosive thing. A strongly worded letter at worst would have been, I think, the thing my father would have done when he was still alive if he had fallen out with somebody.
So are all parts of the family in decent contact with all parts of the family? Is there no branch of the family that's kind of, we don't speak to them?
No, I'm pretty lucky on that front. I mean, I think you do have a linchpin in most families who holds everybody together, and when they die, as was the case with my father, unless they are replaced pretty quickly by an obvious, linchpin that will keep everybody together, or who owns a home big enough to host everybody all together at the same time, there is a natural tendency to have less frequency in meeting up than you did beforehand. But I'm very lucky that I live near quite a lot of my family, and we do see each other very regularly, or as regularly as we can, given working and family lives and everything one has to juggle around it. But come on, you're Greek. you do high emotion. I'm going to take a punt and correct me if I'm wrong, that yours is much more in the mega explosion that would terrify most Brits and think, oh my God, how are you ever going to come back from this? And then 2 minutes later, because you've got it all out, it's all fine and you just get on with life as normal.
Well, look, most Brits think that is happening if we're talking about recipes anyway. So what sounds like a massive argument to you may not be one. I think it's about size more than temperament. My mother is one of 6. My father is one of 7. And so there are dozens of cousins at my age level and then hundreds at the level below that. And so when the family is that big and there's inheritance issues and stuff like that involved, someone's going to fall out with someone. Weirdly, I think because petit bourgeois is a big thing in Greece.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite a useful thing. So there's a lot of effectively working class people, because my family were from working class roots, but sort of went a little step up, if that makes sense, were educated more than their parents and did better than their parents. And then the next generation did the same again. So there is this reaching for middle class. And part of that is temperamental. You know, that the fighting and the feuding and the shouting is seen as a little bit working class. And so it doesn't happen so much. It manifests more in passive aggressive behavior and microaggressions and things like that. And I'll give you one example. There are some names in Greece that are very common, like Maria, Mary, or Eleni, Helen. In my father's side of the family, there is already obviously a Maria, there is already obviously an Eleni, but some of the brothers have also married women who are called Maria and called Eleni. And so in the family lingo, they are called Maria and Maria the bride, Eleni and Eleni the bride. Literally, like everyone talks about Eleni Inifi. Even though Eleni the bride is now in her early 80s, she is still not fully integrated into my father's side of the family. She's still singled out in a particular way, which I think is quite funny. But you know,
better than being like Eleni the fat. Or
that was very much my father's side of the family. So my mother was like, she was extremely patient with people, but when she lost patience, you know, she would put a line through them and they wouldn't exist for her. And she would never tell us what it was about. She would say generic things like, this is not a person that I wish to associate with, if some cousin had ticked her off. So we never got to find out details, which is quite Englishy, actually.
Oh, I would have wanted the tea so badly.
Yeah, me too. But we never did. And then, you know, thank God they're changing the law in Greece, because this isn't an issue in my family, but what is an issue in a lot of families, inheritance stuff.
Yeah.
Because in Greece, there is a way to leave things to all your children. And then if they are unable to sort out an arrangement between them about whether they want to sell it or do something with it, or, you know, it stays like that and then it passes to all of their children. So increasingly in Greece, you have small bits of land that are owned jointly by like 30 people.
God.
And it is impossible to get agreement on what to do with it. And they are actually changing the law now in Greece because it does cause huge amount of arguments among families. Because there are always bits of the family that need the money and bits of the family that don't need the money and would rather hold on to the investment. So that's the seed that causes a lot of the feuds in Greek families. And it's a particular one and a legal one, and it is one that's about to change.
Fascinating.
Quiet, Riot.
And that's all we have time for, Naomi. I even gave you a little bit of Greek inheritance law in the bargain. So goodbye, my friend. I know you're gone. You said you're gone, but I can still feel you here. I'm sensing these are Spice Girl lyrics I'm speaking now, right?
It's not the end. You gotta keep it strong before the pain turns into fear.
Okay.
And then you go, so glad we made it. Okay, don't worry. So farewell.
Okay, yeah.
Farewell to everybody.
What the hell? Listen, I'm too old for the Spice Girls, thankfully. I sort of just missed it. This is a mystery to anyone in their 40s, but people in their 50s actually missed the whole Spice Girls thing because when they were out, it was very much a young girl and young gay man thing. We grew up on Madonna and Cher and people like that, and Kylie. The Spice Girls are really tame stuff for us. So
Johnny come late.
Yeah.
Well, farewell to everyone at home, but only until Thursday when we'll be back with another bumper show. Until then, please sign up to back us on ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod if you want to get an invite to that editorial meeting Alex talked about on 17th of February at 6:30 GMT.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We love you lots and lots. Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
So we can give Alex something now to fade out in order for us not to get into legal trouble. So I met the Spice Girls once. I was rehearsing for Jesus Christ Superstar in a massive sort of warehouse in the Docklands where they had built the entire set. And right next to us, the Spice Girls were rehearsing for some sort of comeback tour. And we used to occasionally have lunch in the tables outside because we were Studio 2, they were Studio 3. And we used to have lunch on the pub tables outside at the same time. And so we got chatting to each other.
No.
I say to each other, not all of them, some of them were quite mean. And at this point, Alex, you can fade it out so we don't get sued.